started. Okay, so you do an invitation for us.
Sir, will Joel join me in prayer, please? Our Father, as we gather this evening on this rainy day, we thank you for safe travel here and we pray for safe travel when we return to our homes tonight. We thank you for blessing our community through the years and as we plan for the future and make decisions regarding the future of our county and the resources provided by our citizens and how to allocate them. We just pray, as always, for your wisdom that we might make decisions appropriate. And as always, we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, well, I would like to make my usual proposal for a few changes to the agenda. Now, I'll make this in form of a motion that the agenda be approved with the deletion of item number 1 under unfinished business. And 2 additions. One being the approval of the MOU for the Lower Cartagena Bridge. I would propose that be the first thing under new business. And the approval of the letter of support for EMBA as item number 6, the last item under new business.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we have a lot of citizens here tonight. How many of you are here regarding the Rainbow Lake? Is that pretty much all the citizens? And then there's a couple of other issues, or no? Just a comment you said on the, okay, which will come up during the course of the meeting, not as an additional speak. I wonder if we might move that up in the agenda.
We can make that up where we can start off first thing. Okay. Then I will modify my motion to include that.
All right. So you don't have to sit through everything else.
You're welcome to.
And you're welcome to stay after.
Yeah, right.
Any other changes to the agenda?
No, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let me write this in. Okay, the first item then will be approval of the minutes for the July 11th work session, July 11th executive session, the July 12th regular meeting, the July 31st special call meeting, and the July 31st executive session. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I have none.
If not, I will make a motion that the minutes be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sandy, you want to give us your financial statement?
This is the financial report for July 31st. Each department should be at 58% of their budget used. Departments over budget at July 31st are tax assessors at 60%, sheriff's office at 60%, detention center 61%, superior court 62%, parks and recreation 61%, planning and zoning 59%, Appalachian Drug Task Force at 62%. Overall, we are at 36% of the total revenue budget received and 56% of the total expenditure budget used. Total revenue received to date, $7,665,266. Total expenditures to date, $11,938,974.
Are there any questions or comments regarding the financial statement?
How are we looking on the use of a TAN this year?
we've made one drop,
So it has.
but it was August, again, before we made that one, so we're holding safe.
Anything else on the financial statement? If not, thank you, Sandy. We will now open this to citizens wishing to speak, so that the folks that would like to address the situation with Rainbow Lake, we would ask that you come to the podium and state your name and make whatever comments that you would like to make. Let me start by asking if everybody has seen the copy of the map showing what areas will not be. Okay, go make sure.
My name is Joe Petrocki. You need to say an address, right?
A spelling of your last name.
P-A-P-R-O-C-K-I.
Thank you.
First off, I want to thank you guys and gals for giving us a chance to speak about our concerns over this potentially devastating project on our side of the county. My wife and daughter and I just put together some quick notes just so I can be brief and let other people speak. And I feel like I need to get through these, so bear with me. We believe the Rainbow Lake clear cut will have lasting and devastating effects in 4 main areas. The number one will be water. We think the soil erosion and silt runoff will critically impact not only Rainbow Lake itself, but James Creek, Mountain Town Creek, and even Carter's Lake. And it'll also impact our groundwater and well water. Number two, the wildlife. We believe a clear cut of this magnitude, it will be pretty much 100% obliteration of habitat, which will vastly diminish animal populations for hunting and fishing for many years. Number three, quality of life. We believe people come to Gilmer County to enjoy its forests, lakes, creeks, fresh air, and natural beauty. We believe deforestation, again on this scale, will force people like us to reconsider, where we're living. We want to be surrounded and hemmed in by this devastation when there's other places that we could probably may have more stringent rules about how they handle timbering. And then the fourth one is property values. I think we will almost immediately see property values plummet. I mean, by the looks of what else is going on around here. And then, of course, that means tax revenues are going to go down with it, and county services will go down, jobs will probably be lost. But if those 4 things aren't disturbing enough, I think just the sheer size of this clear cut will be. I mean, at over 800 acres, it will be one of the largest cuts in the county and easily visible from outer space. I mean, you'll be able to land, if it was flat, you could land 747s on it. I mean, it's really insane. And people keep saying, it's private property, there's really not a lot we can do about it. And that may be true, but as far as I'm concerned, when someone nukes 800 plus acres and grinds it to the ground and snuffs out every bit of life on it, that becomes public. That's no longer private as far as I'm concerned. It's a very public matter. And that's another reason I think a lot of us are here. It also seems part of a recent and worrying trend. From where I live, if I take a right out of my driveway and go down to the southern end of Seth Hyatt Road, there's a clear cut going on there right now. There's still this equipment sitting out there. I don't know how many acres that is. If I go down Mountain Town Road, and there's a clear cut off of Craigtown that I saw recently. And now we'll have the Rainbow Lake area to contend with. And it seems like all this is happening in the past year. It seems like a sudden uptick in wiping out our forests, and it's really, I kind of want to know what's going on. And then perhaps worst of all, it's my understanding that one of the main property owners lives in the Atlanta area. I know there's other people involved in different areas. And then the logging company is supposedly out of Cartersville. So to me, at the end of the day, a handful of people who aren't even here, not even in this county anymore, they're going to walk away with some quick cash while we in Gilmer County are left holding the bag. You know, basically a near permanent, toxic, 800-acre scar across our once pristine landscape. And personally, it turns my stomach to think about it. And I'm here tonight as a Gilmer County resident and taxpayer, and I'm speaking up with the rest of my concerned neighbors to bring attention to this disaster in the making. And I hope there are things that both Gilmer and the state of Georgia could consider to help keep Gilmer great. I think we could consider extending lake and stream buffers by much wider margins, maybe up to 1,000 feet. We could require, or at least incentivize, landowners to log sustainably, favoring select cuts rather than clear cuts, which the logic of a clear cut still just baffles me. I don't understand it. And then we could also incent logging companies to replant trees after a clear cut instead of just leaving the wasteland. I guess in closing, another reason I'm here, I don't want to sit back and watch our county become like the next poster child of what not to do with our beautiful natural resources, the reason so many people come to this county. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Diane Davenport. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I grew up here. I live on property on Seth Hunt Road that my grandfather bought in 1921. So my family, Lester Corbin, my father was Gordon Davenport, and the Corbins and Davenports have lived there since 1921. Now, I understand it's private land, and having worked for an attorney, I understand these legal things. However, there is such a thing as having some concern for the community. And I don't know what we can do, but this is not right that 800 acres will be clear cut. And even if they replant it, they don't replant with native trees. They generally just put out some kind of pine and let it go. And they take a long time to grow. But you're going to see with 800 acres, that's going to devastate our entire, I'm downstream from that. So it's going to devastate us for as long as I live, and as long as my family who will inherit my land live. There's not much you can do after it's been clear cut that badly. So I don't know what we can do, but I would like to do something. And I know these people, and I know the original owner, Clark Rogers, would not be happy. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Michael Smith, and I'm Joe's neighbor, Diane's neighbor. All of us live on James Creek mostly, and the lake feeds that creek. It flows right into Mountain Town. Kathy Kendler, the green shirt, it's no longer 800 acres. It's close to 2,000 acres because all of the other adjoining people have said, well, if he's going to do it, well, I'm going to do it. This is going to ruin, the property values. There's no way that buffer is going to stop those creeks from filling up with mud. And y'all all have seen the map right now. You can see the 50 acres that have been clear cut. It's already flowing into the creeks. I bet we go out there. Who went out last Friday to see it? You want to go right now after this rain we just had? I guarantee you there's mud in all those creeks flowing down. And I'm going to do everything I can to stop it. I'm not going to lose all of my property values for this guy who's got a dam that's leaking. And like Joe said, a select cut could do exactly what he needs to do, not a clear cut. And he doesn't live anywhere around here. He could care. Alvin Sisson, the Red Suspenders, he worked and built the lake with Clark. And those creeks that feed it are not going to be protected by the 500-foot barrier, and they feed way above Rainbow Lake. So I don't see how you're going to protect this water value. And there's got to be something that can be done. It's going to impact too many people. The water quality will go, the tax base is going to go. It's going to devastate the whole area. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
My name is Daniel Peckus. This is my son Bryson. I'm a scout leader. I own roughly 40 acres downstream. One of the projects that I'm proud of my boys, they've walked that creek, they've cleaned that creek, they take pride in that creek. We built a recreational area just for the scouts. We use it yearly. And I see all this hard work that I plan on leaving to my son going to pot. In 1996, I received a copy of a certified letter to Clark Rogers from the DNR, reclassifying that dam because it was dangerous. I was told in that letter that the reason I received it is because when that dam reaches at full pull summer capacity, that a 21-foot wave would demolish everything for no less than 1.5 miles downstream. That's my house. This past weekend, I walked out on the porch and there was a black bear and 2 cubs. Came right up the driveway. It's not unusual to see. Take out that 800 acres, I'm probably going to see a lot more because they have nowhere to go. And that's only going to be short-lived before they all begin to die. We need to stop this. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any other comments that anyone would like to make?
My name's Kathy Kindler. I live on the other side where all these people are. I moved here close to 12 years ago because of the beauty of this place. I have a little lawn farm. I have 20-some acres back there. And it's now something I can't even recognize. All my fence lines are in danger because they cut right up to the fence line. My driveway in is demolished. In 11 plus years, I never had to cut a tree down that fell across my road in. In this last storm, I cut down 5 that fell across my road because there's nothing to prevent now the wind from knocking the trees that are right next to the road over. You know, it's too late for my area because they've already cut it, and anybody that comes back there will tell you it looks like a war zone. They've not only cut, but they've left all kinds of trash. There are 3 TVs right next to my property that obviously the workers, it's not somebody that would know any better, came up and just threw old TVs out on that property. There are 2 big metal skids that I have to pass every day. It's, love my place, but it's a disaster right now. And it will not look good as long as I'm alive, I'm sure. And it's so depressing to see such a great area. And I have access to Rainbow Lake. That was my emergency access out of my property. Tom Carter allowed me to go back there with my llamas because he knew I'd take care of the property and I'd never do anything to hurt it. And what they're doing now is, in my mind, criminal. Again, I don't know what we can do, but to me it's, you know, as bad or worse than anything I could ever imagine when I moved down here.
Thank you.
My name is Arden Miller. I'm also a neighbor. I live down the street from Rainbow Lake, downstream. And I won't waste a lot of your time. I just have a few additional points. I agree with everything that everyone has already said. But in addition to some of those issues, I feel like we need to also be aware that we could have an invasive species issue, whether they replant or not. Typically what happens when you clear cut property is you end up with invasive species down the road, which could further devastate the area. We also have a lot of endangered species, not only in Georgia, but in Gilmer County, and I have a complete list of those if you'd like to have that. But I worry a little bit about those endangered species because I'm sure that they inhabit part of that 800 acres. And also with clear cutting, rather than selective cutting, you end up with flooding issues and runoff issues. And so we've already seen a lot more destructive weather patterns lately. And we've had flooding and mudslides and landslides in Gilmer County in the last few years. Bridges have gone out. And if they cut this 800 acres, we're going to have more increased flooding and landslides. So in addition to the loss of habitat, the loss of wildlife, you know, the damage to our water supply, I just see this as a huge disaster, and I would appreciate anything that you could do to help. Thank you.
Could you leave the list of the endangered species with us?
We can make copies if you don't, but
Any other comments?
Y'all have to excuse me, I have a throat problem. My name's Alvin. Citizen, and I was born and raised in this area. And also I have worked the whole project whenever they built Rainbow Lake. I worked Rainbow Lake from cutting the brush to building the dam itself, and there's 3 major creeks that feed Rainbow Lake. You put a 500-foot buffer down next to the road and to the lake itself. You got a 5-mile creek above this 500-foot buffer. What is going to happen to it? Use your imagination. What is going to happen with this 5-mile creek going up to the mountains and nothing between it and the sun except the air that's there? So, I mean, use your imagination and realize what is going to happen to that lake. That 500-foot buffer, it'll control a little of the surface water. But the water that feeds that lake will come in there red mud. I've seen it happen when already the cutting has been done there. And water, red mud going towards, the water, the creek below the dam. And this other is, gonna be a major impact, major attack on the water in Rainbow Lake. I've been on every foot of that property. Like I said, I've worked that property and that lake system from day one, from the original start of the property on Rainbow Lake. And it, to me, it is an emotional thing. I represent BOC, whose property joins that lake for close to half a mile, or to that creek below the lake. And so we are definitely opposed to a clear cut. We would definitely love to see a select cut, because there's timber in there that has reached its prime and it needs to come out. But it does not need to be bare ground whenever they put their equipment out in there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Anybody else? My name is Richie Mullen. I'm a graduate from the University of Georgia Forestry School. And I moved up here in LJ, Georgia approximately 36 years ago. One of my big loves of this area is the woods, nature trails, hiking, you name it. I grew up on a swim team, so I love water. I scuba dive, I snorkel, I surf, I ski, you name it. If it's got water in it, I do it. So water's my big thing. Fortunately, unfortunately at the time, but when I was in college, I didn't have any idea how I'm going to make a living. Because I wasn't good enough surfer to make a living on that, and you don't get paid hiking, so anyhow. But I did find something I could do, and I found a love, and that's forestry. As a matter of fact, Clark Rogers was my predecessor in Georgia Craft Timber Company. I followed his footsteps, which is big footsteps to follow. But I worked for Georgia Craft Timber Company, got into that. The company folded up. After a time, they had 1.5 million acres in Georgia. It's now changed hands to several companies. We planted, I think we planted 4.5 million trees a year. Our company did. But I found something I love, and that's forestry and working with the land. My dad's a farmer and engineer, and he had something in common with Clark. But anyhow, when I moved to this area, I got a job now with the Georgia Forestry Commission. And my job title is Water Quality Specialist. And that's a good fit. I love it. My job prior to this, I got laid off from the timber company, and they laid everybody off. 2006, and between that time, I went to work for an erosion control company. that monitor erosion on buildings, parking lots, et cetera, houses, neighborhoods, you name it, developments. So I got educated on that. So when this job came open, the Forestry Commission, it was a perfect open door because I had forestry in the background, which they wanted the forestry, but I also had erosion controls. So being a water quality erosion specialist, that's a good fit. Okay? So that gives you a background where I'm coming from. One thing, and maybe I could answer some questions, I've got some great literature for the people back here. One of the main parts of my job, the most difficult part of my job, is water quality complaints. I get called, or EPD gets called, let me back up. Georgia Forestry Commission was hired by EPD, Environmental Protection Department, to monitor logging operations in Georgia. So that's one of our tasks, besides firefighting. I was the one up on the mountain up there on fires too. But one of my jobs, you know, they hired us to watch. They do everything else from building highways or septic tanks or stuff like that. But EPD hired us to monitor logging jobs to make sure that they're not causing erosion and not causing trouble. That is my job. So I'm the erosion police, I guess you could say, for forestry. I work the whole area north of I-20 North. That's my section of the state. And the way it works, when we get a complaint, someone may call in a complaint, like yourselves or anybody. Call in a complaint. You might call James Holloway, you might call the sheriff, you might call our office. We have a firefighting office here in Gilmer County. Or call the Forestry Service, which is different from the Forestry Commission. We're the Forestry Commission, which is state-run. Okay? Forest Service is federal, and they own their own land, and a lot of that fire was on Forest Service land. Clear that up. And my wife works for them, and we have arguments all the time. They get better uniforms than we do. The way it works is someone calls in a complaint. They funnel it down to find out whose area it's in. If it's in one of the counties that I work, they send it to me. I get the information, then I start bird dogging down information. In other words, I find out who the landowner is, who the logger is, what the problems are, everything about the place. I study it out, make maps, go out there and look at it, and do a harvest inspection. We have an exam, a check-off exam that we do. We also have a statewide exam that we do once every 2 years. It's a random selection of all logging jobs in the state of Georgia. And we monitor how logging's doing as far as erosion goes in the state of Georgia. We pick several counties throughout the entire state. Actually, all the counties through the entire state. We pick several logging jobs at random. And we go to those sites and inspect them. And we've got like a 12-page front and back exam that we grade those logging jobs. And those score sheets and everything's open to the public. The exam I do on logging jobs here, and I have done one on the one we're talking about, Mr. Rogers. We go through that, score it. If they score good, fine. If they don't, I deal with them. I write letters to the landowner, to the logger, the timber buyer, if there's another one that's a forestry consultant, I write it to him, the local office, and my boss. So all those people who get the information in my reports. I go out, take photographs of the place, I measure things, I look at the SMZs on the creeks, make sure that they're doing everything right. If anything problem I see, I make recommendations, and 90% of the time they do it. Now, if for some reason a logger chose not to, we're not a policing agency, but we do inform. So we get on the phone, my boss would call EPD, they come out and enforce it. So, sometimes $50,000 a day for violations. depending on what it is. Let's see. My voice is going to get out of it. Okay, after that, one of the things that happens on complaints is all the mills in the state of Georgia and surrounding area that have the organization called SFI, Sustainable Forestry Initiative. Big companies, Weyerhaeuser, Inland Container, International Paper, all your big companies, they want that rating. Basically, it's a green rating saying that we abide by correct forestry principles that are sustainable, ongoing forestry, and the forestry keeps growing forest, okay? Healthy forest. So these companies want that stamp. You know, even though they're lumber companies, they want that stamp. Okay, it's very important to them. And if they find out that any logger gets on the bad boy list, which is, you know, has bad scores, they see the records of all my scores, all these timber companies around here. If they see some logger with repeated bad scores, guess what happens? They cut them off. They say, you can't bring wood here to our mill anymore. And what does that do to a logger? I mean, he's done cut the wood, he's got the fuel in it, he's got the investment, he's got the employees, he's paying, he's got all that tied up in it, and then he can't take wood to the mill, he's hung out. So they got a motivation to stay on our good side, okay? I'm trying to get you to understand what we do. If certain violations are bad enough there, again, we turn it over to EPD and they deal with it. We have certain rules that they go by. I brought some of our books. Let me grab them right quick. This basically is the rule book for logging, what they have to abide by EPD. Okay, I suggest everybody get one, look at it, and read it. Look through it. There's a lot of information in that. It covers everything from road building, log decks, stream crossings, SMZs, which is streamside management zones. We try to get people to call it that instead of buffers. True buffers are no-touch zones. Streamside management zones are zones that you manage your timber. You can thin in it, but you don't clear cut it. Okay? That's the streamside management zone. Several comments that were made, I'd like to shed some light on. Between development and forestry and agriculture, they all have different rules. Agriculture has their own book, development has their own book. If you have anyone in here that's got a blue card, you've had to go through the erosion control class put out by the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation. Anybody in here with a blue card? Got it? Pretty tough course, erosion control class. They have their own rules. There's a lot more rules in development. You know, when you go start building a house or a development area with lots in it, a Walmart parking lot, school buildings, they have a lot of rules and stipulations they got to go by. Forestry has this. Why is there a difference? Why is there a difference between their rule book and our rule book? What do you think? One thing is they're totally clearing dirt. They're exposing dirt. They're moving soil. They're pulling roots out. They're doing all this clearing. They have a lot more potential when you got bare open dirt on an open parking lot or a house building there. You don't have any trees, no roots to hold that system intact. Our rules are different because it's a whole different animal that we're dealing with. When you even clear cuts, when you clear cut an area, it looks terrible. It looks like a bomb went off, right? That's above the ground. What's going on under the ground? All those trees, roots, and everything's holding everything intact very, very well. So their rules is a lot different. Now, one thing that EPD has done tests on is some of the things to stop erosion. We have silt fence, we have hay bales, right? You've seen a lot of this stuff. Okay, one thing that they've proven and done tests on is that logging slash piled in the correct manner can stop more silt than any of those above. They've done a test on it, okay? One thing that our exams prove through the statewide exams is that if loggers follow this rule book and do everything properly, there's not problems with erosion. Okay? Now, if they don't follow it, there's problems. But if they do follow the rules in this book, it works out. One thing, so I wanted to cover the water, because that was brought up, that water would be messed up. You go clearing for your house. We were just over that way just now. And we took some pictures of, and you're welcome to come out and look at it. We took pictures just going down the road. This was in the neighborhoods, okay? This was in the neighborhoods, nowhere near the harvest operation. Red mud is flowing down the sides of the roads, going straight into those streams, a lot of it. Now, I've been over to the logging job. That was clear cut. I did a logging inspection. I checked those guys. When we go out and do an inspection, if there's a problem, we keep monitoring once every week, at least every week. We come out there and do another inspection and make sure they're staying on track. We do that until the job is done and completed. Okay? Take pictures, we score them, we put them on the score sheet, we send a report to everybody involved. Any questions I have on that?
I guess all of our question is, are they complying with everything?
Correct.
So they have not violated anything. And they're clear cutting properly, putting those brush piles up there so we won't have any erosion, right? I mean, really, I know you're doing your job, but, you know, what can we do, I guess?
Yeah, and a lot of times, when things get messed up, we come out there and tell them what to do, and they do it. If they do it and follow that, it gets fixed. Not every time. Sorry about that. One of the comments was maybe it's going to hurt wildlife. Okay, is anybody in here a wildlife biologist? Okay. I've got a lot of friends that are wildlife biologists, and they will tell you, even clear cuts, and I don't necessarily like clear cuts, but clear cuts have been proven to increase game, increase wildlife, increase habitat, especially when you have SMZs breaking the land up in what they call edge. Wildlife people call, it's a term called edge effect, and the more edge effect you have with streams and buffers mixed with the clear cut, you have different diversity, you're going to have more game, more wildlife. It's just proven fact. John's a deer hunter. When the area's clear cut, that hunting club kills more deer. I promise you. I've leased land for over 30 years, hunting land. Okay, the other thing, some of the other points were made. Point was made by native trees not being there. Loblolly is a native tree. And a lot of times they do plant loblolly, they plant white pine. Both of those are native trees here.
Richie, one of the citizens mentioned invasive species. Can you address that?
Yes, and that invasive species is one of our departments in Georgia Forestry deals with invasive species. We have a whole department toward that to combat invasive species. Invasive species. We have education brochures on that. We have our guys go out, and anytime, for instance, right now, coping grass is a big thing. Our guys treat it. We have another group that's all forest health. My group's water. So we're broken up into different sections in what our agency handles. But we do have an invasive species group, and they deal with that. Just because the area is clear cut, that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna have an increase of that. It can, but not necessarily. Yes,
You said you were just over there and you saw all the mud coming down the road.
Yes.
It's going into the stream, so that's okay?
but guess where the mud's coming from?
Well, from where they cut.
No, it's not. We just got through and I got pictures to show it. It's coming from the houses in the neighborhood and the streets.
Where did you go?
I drove all the roads around the property just now.
Did you go back into Rogers Street?
Sure did, went all the way to the Lima Farm.
Well, there's not a house anywhere around where they cut.
That's right.
So how's it coming from the house?
Just go out there and look. You have
I
erosion.
live there.
Okay.
Okay, we want to have question and answer sections, but I don't want it to divert into an argument.
Well, I just don't see how mud can be allowed anywhere into the creek.
I agree, and that's part of my job, to stop that. Like I said, I love water and I love swimming, and fishing and everything else, so that's my big push also. I don't want it, but the fact is, one of the areas that clear cut, they did what I told them to. As a matter of fact, if you're going down the road, what's the name of the road? Main road.
Pleasant Hill is one.
Pleasant Hill Road, I guess. Right past it, past the church.
Pleasant Hill was past the church.
Okay, that's further down. The clear cut on the left, if you're going in from 52, the clear cut on the left, they brushed all their skid trails so there's no exposed dirt. They left a wide SMZ along the stream. They spread log and slash over the entire deck. That controls erosion very well. They put a buffer, a berm, a brush all the way around the edge of that logging deck so nothing would get out into that stream. Now,
You said there's no exposed dirt? I got a satellite picture and then staff, I just gave him 50 acres of exposed dirt.
okay, but was it the section I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
We were just there.
Okay, I was just there just a little while ago.
Right there.
Before the rain or after?
During, that's why I'm wet.
But here's where I'm at. Everything that you're saying is, if these loggers do something wrong, we're gonna put them on the naughty list. And that's all well and good. Shame on you, you did something bad. I'm trying to be proactive, not reactive. I wanna stop this before it starts, because after they cut it, it's too late.
Let me ask you this, from the Forest Commission's perspective, are they doing this legally and properly at this time?
Everything that I've checked, yes.
Okay.
That doesn't mean something can't go wrong if they continue to cut.
If in fact it's demonstrated at some point that they are putting mud into the streams from the cut,
I'll be on. I promise you.
then they
I
can
will
be shut
on.
down until it's corrected.
Absolutely, and that's my job.
This road, Pleasant Hill Road, coming down from the church, right by the landing site where they loaded the trucks. There's a branch coming down from the church area, back to from the back of the church.
Is that one alongside the road there?
They're on the side of the road,
Okay.
right. I have seen that since they have started cutting, nothing but rolling red mud coming down that branch into the main branch going under the road into the creek.
Is it doing it now?
Sir?
Is it doing it right now?
Well, they have it.
How can we see it?
We were just there, and it might have been during the operation, and the things they did, which basically I told them what's in here. They did it, and it's not doing it since then, because we did a final exam, May, I think, after they left. I did a final exam, I went down there and checked it, it was clear. I went out there just now, it is clear, with all this rain. I went through the neighborhood, Rogers Creek Road, red mud's coming in, every single cover, every single creek there, filled it, and it's nowhere near the harvest. That red mud's coming from somewhere else besides the harvest. And that's one thing I do. One thing in my job, I bird down where it's coming from, okay? In other words, I jump out, start walking up streams.
So you're saying,
find the source.
you're saying none of that mud is coming down from the Meadowbrook where they cut at the end there? Because I've watched it, they cut a road up there that they didn't put anything on until somebody reported them, and all of a sudden they rushed up there and put 2 bales of hay and a little silt fence, and some of those hard rains washed out the road that they had there, and there is mud sitting there that is slowly seeping into that all the time. Because I have to drive it every day, and I watch it seep in every day.
Trying to find a picture for it.
Okay, I don't want this to get into an argumentative session here. I want each side to be able to have their say. But we do need to wrap this up and move on.
I think this.
And I think, Mr. Terrence, that we appreciate what the Forest Service does. They have a job,
Okay.
we have concerns, and
Right.
some of the things that they're doing their job, and frankly, it's just clear cutting 800 acres, it just blows my mind.
And let me say that I sympathize
Yes.
with that.
It's where that
So we just
I
need
hate
to
it.
look and see what we can do.
Yeah. I hate it myself.
It is just it's a travesty to the community. So, and I understand, sir, Mr. Forrest, Mr. Mullins, let me apologize to him. We're not upset with him. I understand he's
yes.
doing his job, but,
Um,
no.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a couple questions to, not that I know what can be done or if anything can be done, but I need some more information. I know in many cases, and I'll give you an example, when the transmission company was putting in their high-powered tower lines, that they had to do a environmental impact study, an assessment, before they were allowed to go in and do any construction and logging and clearing and things. Is there any rule, and that's not your area, I know it's an EPD thing, but is there not any regulations that for something of this magnitude, there needs to be a formal public impact, environmental impact assessment done for this before it begins, or what? Is there some rules in that regard that you can help me with?
Yes, good question. There is on Forest Service land. Forest Service land does have to go through all the hoops of environmental impact statements. They send out notices.
Right.
They have their biologists do some, the invasive species person does some, bird person does some.
Right, yeah, I know.
Everybody you can think of, lots and lots of paperwork.
Even the American Indian folks have to do their surveys.
Right, right. Historical sites, everything. So they have to do that.
So that's Forest Service land,
Correct.
not private property.
Not private property, and that's the difference. And, you know, there's quite a bit of harvesting in Gilmer County. Matter of fact, do y'all know what the #1 cash crop is? You see that mud? You see that mud? At this one? See the mud? Okay. That mud is coming from your property and not the harvest.
It's coming right down that road they cut into it.
That's a picture of it. I
I
stood there at the creek just now. I stood there at the creek, and that's coming from your property.
Mr. Mullins, we need to speak into the microphone so we can get it on our recording.
I have another question, and I don't know who to address it to, whether it's you or not, but this land that is being talked about is in conservation, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
And are there any special rules in terms of use of that land because it's in conservation in terms of harvesting?
Yes. One, they cannot sell the land, cut it up into lots and develop it for real estate. They have agreed to, they'll be severely penalized for that if they do. But they can manage for timber, They can manage for hunting, they can manage for game. It is in conservation use. In other words, I'd much rather have someone in conservation use, my next door neighbor, than something that's gonna be chicken houses, Walmart, or housing projects or whatever. You've got a lot of land. One of the biggest things that promote clean water is forested land. That is the number one. You look at all the tests, you look at all the research. Water that comes off forest land is by far the healthiest water you've got in the state.
Another question in regard to water, particularly that dam is, I don't know, Mr. Sisson's young, he must have been real young when he built that lake, but.
16 years old.
Okay, I thought so. But that dam is an old dam. I believe we put that, the state has put that on a list of endangered, or what is the correct term, Charlie, that
Well,
we've got a
it's
letter on?
Category 1 dam.
Category 1.
In the case of a breach of dam, that there is a high likelihood of loss of life downstream.
And you all mentioned that you live downstream, and that is a risk. Will the cutting of this timber increase the risk of that dam breaching or failing? And if so, what kind of mitigation can be done? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not a dam expert by any means.
I know, I understand.
Yeah, I believe that'd have to be passed on up.
That's okay.
Let me say that the issue of that dam is something that is a concern, but it's a separate issue to the clear cutting.
Unless it increases the risk of
Unless it increases the risk. But
runoff, fast runoff, yeah.
The buffer that's around the dam itself, I think is very likely to protect it in terms of not having it be more likely to breach because of the clear cutting. But that's something, that and other issues or other questions or issues that we're currently exploring with the Safe Dams folks. I don't want to criticize them. I'll say I'm not happy with my response. Is that a criticism? With their response? But we're still working on that. But that's a separate issue.
The whole issue of this is that Tom Carter is trying to repair the dam, and he needs the money. So therefore, he's going to clear cut it all. He's going to ruin the lake anyway, so it's, why fix the dam?
Well, loggers have told me that with clear cutting, silt will go into the lake and ruin the lake.
Yeah.
So even with all the silt, I'm sorry, but I mean, there's bound to be some runoff into the lake. And so a logger told me that probably the dam would, the lake would be ruined anyway after the clear cutting.
Let me ask one other question, and Richie, I think this will be in your area because you deal with wildfire particularly. Does the logging operation and harvesting create a bigger or lower the risk of a wildfire and the damage that might result from that?
Definitely lowers, of course, because you don't have a forest field. And that's one of the problems with old growth forests, and that's why we're having so much trouble out west. And most of our guys are out there, a lot of them, not right now, because of that, because they don't do prescribed burning, because all that brush is just built up because people don't want to cut and stuff like that. You've got all that debris, all that brush, all that old growth, dead wood, and you're going to have forest fires. And that's exactly what we had here in 2016. And believe me, it's tough to fight that. But the question, one comment about the water in the logger, if that was to happen, if any sediment gets in that lake, I'm going to be on it, I promise you.
Well, good, because that was a common, an experienced logger told me that, generally, the silt, there is going to be some silt go into that lake. And so maybe or maybe not.
Yeah.
Are they going to leave a buffer around the lake?
Of quite a bit, yes.
I
How
think
much?
it's 152 acres.
Okay.
One more question, and then I'll be quiet.
Have y'all seen a map, picture of what buffer they're leaving? There should be something out. Okay.
I don't think I saw
Look
that.
at that, let's see, that's more than required by our rule book. That's much more than what we require.
152, thank you.
Do you or does some other agency have any rules or regulations relative to access for firefighting, leaving fire roads or anything like that on private property?
Certain, I think your county road department can answer that. James, I think it's, maybe ask the question again.
Whether there's any requirement to have road access to that area that's been harvested, whether the lumbering or the timber people have to provide any fire access.
No, not that I know of. I do know that.
Okay. Let's hold on for just a minute. We need to change the CD so that we can have a recording of this meeting.
Somebody should have shot the moderator before the color coded number wouldn't have this issue. That's all I heard when I moved here.
And we got a lot of information here too, if somebody wants. I mean, one of our biggest things is education. And I've got some brochures, handouts, and I brought a whole box of our rule books and stuff. I've got little brochures to hand out. Take that with you. Look at it.
I have a question for you. Why clear cut?
Well,
Is it economic reason?
it's, you know, of course, that's up to the individual.
Okay, we're back.
But I don't know what you've done.
His question was why clear cut instead of selective cut?
I think that's something only the owner can answer. Probably.
But, you know, it's kind of like me telling you what in your bedroom, what furniture needs to go where. I don't have the right to go in your house and tell you where your furniture is.
My bedroom doesn't impact hundreds of people and thousands of species of plants and animals.
This will not either. If I can pick it.
Dallas, did you have any other questions?
Where's your office?
We have a firefighting office.
Ellington?
Yes.
Is that where you work out of? Do you live in Gilmer County?
Yes. After 34 years.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to move on a bit now. Let me make just a couple of observations here. The first is that I understand completely how you all feel. I don't live near there, but I don't like it. But here's the thing. I don't know how to stop it. If y'all have, and I've heard several of y'all say you don't know how, but there needs to be a way. And I've looked. And as long as they're doing what legally they have to do, I know of no way to tell these folks you cannot clear your property. There's no law that prevents that. There's no policy from environmental protection that prevents it, assuming you follow the rules that they have set out in place.
And two, you know, someone owns the land and say they have to pay taxes on this land year after year. This allows the landowner to make money off the timber, manage it, and still keep his own farm and keep his land. Otherwise, a lot of people would lose their land.
The bottom line for me, though, is I'd stop it if I could, but I can't. I've looked at various possibilities, and in the end, and I've spoken to the attorneys, to the various agencies, and in the end, the land belongs to them. And if they follow the rules, They can cut it, they can clear cut it, they can do all the things that we all hate so much because they own it. And that's where I am right now. If somebody can say, you know, here's a law, or here's something that you can do, you know, I'm more than happy to execute it, but.
How about eminent domain, turn it into a park?
Um,
Generate revenue for the county
I
and the
don't-
state.
I don't believe preventing someone from clear cutting
Just a thought.
is a reason for eminent domain.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Well, if they were people that lived around here, I don't think anybody would be terribly, as near as upset. But these are people that don't live here that aren't gonna be impacted by any of this.
And-
They're gonna
and-
get their money and they're gonna run happy, laughing to the bank, and we're the ones that are gonna have to deal with this for as long as we're living.
And I do not disagree with that at all. I'm simply saying that legally, you know, there are all these things that, where legalities apply that, you know, I can make you a long list of things I wish people couldn't do. But legally, I can't stop them. And that's, I hate that. I know not as much as y'all do, but I do hate that. I hate to lose the timber, I hate to lose the habitat, even if it'll improve the wildlife, I hate to lose it. And I will readily admit that I don't live in the neighborhood, but I can tell you that even without that, I hate it. But it's not my decision. And unfortunately, legally, it's not y'all's decision. And if I had a way around that, I'd take it, but I don't. If somebody can come up with one, please, you know, give it to me and we'll.
We just appreciate being heard, and so that other people know
Yes,
about
ma'am.
what is going on, because frankly, it blindsided me.
Yes.
And so we'll just have to see what else we can do legally. I mean, you can always,
That's the thing, and that's
Yes.
gonna be the thing that you're gonna be kind of running into is the legally part.
right.
And if y'all see anything, please call my office and say so.
We will, and we appreciate it. I'm not upset with you. we just don't know what to do.
And I understand. Let me
We
tell you,
appreciate everything you do.
I have, other than firefighting, this is definitely one of the hardest parts of my job. But, you know, I'm passionate about clean water, believe me. And when August Trash Creek, I'll probably get hotter than anybody. And I'll do everything I can. You know, I want to see the loggers be able to earn a job, earn a living, and make their lives, support their families too, but I also want to keep them do what's right.
Well, my daddy was a logger. He was a timber man all his life, so I totally understand that. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Are
very
we,
much.
okay to move on to the next topic now? If so, because I'm old and can't stand it any longer, I have to ask for a 5-minute break here. Appreciate your patience, and we'll go ahead and proceed. Next item would be approval of the MOU for the Lower Carter Cave Bridge. We have received from Georgia DOT the memorandum of understanding that says that they will replace this bridge, and we agree to pay half of the cost of obtaining whatever additional rights of way that they need. They've estimated that at $100,000, our half of that will be $50,000. So we want to, since we're talking about well over $1 million to replace that bridge, we want to go ahead and get this all back, approved and back to them as quickly as possible. Are there any other comments?
Just a clarification, if I understood you yesterday, the 50,000 is a fixed figure regardless of what we.
That's the way I read the MOU. Now, I don't have a legal opinion on that, but the way I read it is if it exceeds $100,000, that we're still fixed at 50. So,
Can we add that restriction into our resolution?
no.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I want no restrictions, I want to just tell them, yes, fix it.
So the answer, Travis, the answer is no, it's not guaranteed.
I will make a motion that we approve and adopt the MOU.
And I will second it, even though I make that comment.
Okay.
Does that also mean that we're spending the money? Do we need to do that as a separate motion?
We'll need a,
I think y'all are going to put
we have 30 days before we have to pay them the money. We can make that part of our next month's budget amendment.
Yeah.
That's good.
So now we're
Keep up.
Oh, yeah. But it beats me into.
So I would move that we adopt the corporate review.
I made the motion, I think Dennis has seconded it. Is there any further comment? If not, all in favor? Aye. Discussion and possible action to grant the authority to the tax commissioner to waive interest and penalties. Now, we had two things that we discussed yesterday, and the subject at hand is whether or not we grant the tax commissioner the authority to waive interest and penalties. We also do have a request for that, and we have someone here to speak to that tonight. So I want to ask John if you would like to go ahead and speak to a particular request. Now, if you would just come to the microphone and give your name.
I get too close to these things. Commissioners, thank you for allowing me a chance to speak, and good evening. In reference to the action to grant authority to the tax commissioner to waive interest and penalties, I may be partially responsible for this kind of coming up at this time, because I've been a part of a request to the county to do that. I really was kind of surprised that there was potentially not be able to do that. So I certainly am in support of our tax commissioner being able to strategically, I think there are a lot of pitfalls associated with the ability to do that, but I do think that there are extenuating circumstances that can exist in our county and tax base, or in any county and tax base, that may present an opportunity that actually makes sense when, in certain instances where taxes and penalties have accrued over a number of years, and then there becomes an opportunity to do something different with that property. So I guess what I'll do tonight, and I know that, so I'm definitely in support of this, and I'm sure there is a forum by which we would formally exercise this, the possibilities once this gets granted. But in particular, I represent, this is not me personally, I'm a taxpayer and I pay my taxes, but I represent a man who also is a taxpayer. He pays a tremendous amount of property taxes in this county, by and large on almost everything he has here. There is a specific property that he has that has been laying dormant for a number of years. It was platted as a subdivision that never really got off the ground. It never was developed. No infrastructure, roads, or anything of that nature were put into the area. It was all coincident with the time period in 2008 and beyond that impacted so many people in this county, especially those who were involved in development and residential development. And like so many others, there are folks who ended up being the surviving partner in a partnership that was in a development, and some people have gone by the wayside due to bankruptcy and even passing away, and then you've got somebody that's sort of left holding the bag. And so that's kind of the situation that I'm representing here. This landowner realizes that the only real value to this property is for somebody who can come and invest the potential in excess of $1 million, possibly $2 million it would take to make it marketable as it was designed to be, which I'm sure was their initial plan to do as well. Because of the ownership structure of the property, over the years, quite a bit of property taxes and interest have accrued on the property, to the point of where, in doing a little bit of research, the penalties on the property are actually outrunning the increase in value of the property. So it becomes it sort of gets into a vicious cycle where every year it gets worse. This property's already been to one tax sale and did not sell. The unique complications with a property like this one are where the lots are already platted, but the developer still owns the road system in the common areas. When that goes to a tax sale, people see that if I buy this, there's not going to be really anything I can do with it unless you find that one person that just wants to buy 130 lots, and those aren't really growing on trees. So this particular instance, we have a developer that's willing to come in and purchase this property. We have a property owner who's willing to discount it dramatically in order to incent this buyer to be able to do it to not much more than what the tax value of the property actually is on the books. But the roadblock basically remains the taxes, penalties, and interest, that back taxes that remain on the property. What's basically been asked is there some kind of relief that the county can give on those back taxes in order to free up the ability for this transaction to take place? Ultimately, we're talking about a sale that's going to be valued in the very few hundreds of thousands of dollars. Someone would come in, invest potentially $1 million or $2 million into the property. The completed end state of the second home development that it would be, just lot property values would then be in the millions, and you would potentially, as people began to build cabins and so forth in there, have maybe in excess of $10 million worth of property value in this place. But however, at this juncture, it's just kind of in a stalemate, sitting there just accruing a lot of penalties and not accruing any value, actually probably diminishing in value because it's just getting that much harder and harder to move. And so kind of circling back to this resolution, I think it's important that our tax commissioner be able to have the ability to look at strategic and unique circumstances that, though they may in the short term cost a little bit of, I say cost money, that there may actually have to be a a slight loss in tax revenue. But the big picture in the long term, and really not that long a term, in the very, short long term, that could generate potentially a lot more property tax revenue for Gilmer County. And that's not to mention the additional sales tax revenue and everything it would generate if we had, 130 potential new people from the Atlanta area that had a cabin here. So it's, again, I know there will be a forum where once this is adopted, that our tax commissioner has this authority, that I'll be able to present this case, but I wanted to sort of use it as an example to say that I do think that our tax commissioner should be able to make strategic decisions where it benefits the county long term, that we make certain concessions so that the settling effect, especially of this recession that we're just now coming out of, that can kind of break loose some of those log jams, especially on some of the bigger properties that are the remnants that haven't settled out yet. That those things can go ahead and happen, and at the end of the day, I think it could create a win-win situation for the remaining partner that has the property, the developer that can come in and make something out of this property, and the county that can be the ultimate beneficiary for a lot greater and sustainable realized tax revenue. So,
I have one question, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may. I know you said there was one tax sale that the property was not bid on at all, and so it was not sold at that time. I believe the tax commissioner uses the rule that beginning bid or opening bid must be the amount of back taxes plus penalties plus interest. I think that's the standard starting bid on those tax sales. Can you give me a rough idea of what that number is?
Right now, according to the tax website, it's about $239,000.
Okay.
This is 130 lots on probably about 70 acres of land. They're platted as like 1.5 acre lots.
Okay. That's all.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
David, what was the rule going to do that?
February 1st, 2017, and you want the current resolution and authority to expire on February. Well, remember we talked about that because there's occasions of January meeting doesn't occur because of snow event. My suggestion was to make it within February. I was going to look to see if it was a leap year, because I wasn't sure. It's February 2021.
It is not.
Not be a leap year. Okay, we better have it tonight. So it'd be February 28, 2021.
I would,
Do we have a copy? Do we have a copy of that original resolution? Atlanta will have it. It's going to be in the minutes.
No changes other than these dates.
Other than the dates, everything would be
That's fine.
consistent.
then I would make a motion that we renew this resolution from February 1st of 17, beginning and ending February 28th of 2021.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye. And John, just for your clarification, I want to make sure you understand, there has been in the past, the tax commissioner has had that official authority, but that has lapsed and was not effective, or has not been effective since that date. So this will reinstate that authority for the tax commissioner.
Now, I should say though that in doing this, we are not saying anything one way or the other on your proposal.
That's correct.
All right. Appointment of a member to the Keep Gilmer Beautiful Committee. We have candidate Ron Cheslock. If nobody has any other candidates, I would make a motion that we appoint Mr. Ron Cheslock to a full term on the Keep Gilmer Beautiful. Was it a full term here?
Yeah.
On Keep Gilmer Beautiful Committee.
I'll second that.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion and possible action of the annual update of the community work program and capital improvements element within the joint comprehensive plan document. I did speak with Julian Mills with the regional commission today. There is no official action on this we need to take tonight, but I wanted to convey that I gave her the changes that we discussed yesterday. She's going to make the 2 additions and the 1 correction that we talked about. So she will send me a new draft with those changes incorporated when I get it on fall. Yeah. There will be a.
Does that mean there will be some decision made later? Officially?
No, not really. What she says is going to happen is that there will be a public comment session that will be joint between the county and the 2 cities.
Okay.
And once that public comment section is finished, she is going to transmit to me, along with the revised draft, a letter, I forget just what she called it, a letter to go forward with that will be signed and submitted. So
The only thing I would say is that joint meeting should also include whether the other entities that are on that have responsibility for funding or action, Chamber of Commerce, Joint Development Authority.
And I will certainly see that they're aware of the time and place of the meeting. Next year, you know, we talked about we need to start this sooner and bring them in as full partners. And that would be,
Actually, we talked about that last year too.
well, we didn't do it, but, I'll actually write it down. But I will be happy to make sure that each of those partners receives an official time and place invitation to that meeting. Now, I will say that I've attended these last 2 meetings, and they look very much like our public comment session earlier. I wasn't attending as someone making a comment, I was just attending for the county. And Mac Woods was there for East LJ. I don't know if we had anybody from LJ, but we were in. I mean, nobody commented.
I think part of that might be just promoting this a little better and the awareness. I think some people might attend and become involved if they're aware of it.
Well, we certainly can promote it now. I mean, there'll be the usual advertisement for the public comment session, but we're free to promote it over and above that to any extent that we'd like to do.
Well, at least for the parties that are involved on the absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little disappointed we don't have a resolution to vote on this tonight, because I was not going to vote in favor of it. I don't have the opportunity to do that.
You take too much pleasure in those no votes.
I really need to explain that, because otherwise I'm not sure the right folks will get the right idea. But this is a strategic, long-term plan for our county from 2019 out to 2023. It's a strategic planning document that we need to give a lot of importance to. And I'm just going to make 4 points, and then I'm going to shut up. I don't think this document truly addresses our highest priority needs as a county, and that's one of my concerns and one of my things. And I'll mention a couple of them. It doesn't really address our infrastructure, transportation infrastructure like I would like it to. Nothing is mentioned about revenue or T-SPLOST or any funding for anything like that, or that it doesn't address some of the medical care needs that I see this county and the citizens need. It doesn't actually address anything to do with the biggest expense to our county and to the taxpayers of this county in combating the alcohol and drug abuse and the cost associated with that. I went back and looked at our budget and looked at some numbers. We're talking about probably more than $4 million that we're spending on that one particular issue alone. And we don't address that. That's a pretty big priority in my mind. So that's there. It doesn't address anything regarding becoming more efficient in providing services or reducing the cost of providing services to our citizens, and that bothers me. It doesn't actually commit anybody to any funds to implement anything in this plan. That bothers me, that we're making a plan with no commitment as far as I'm concerned. And it does include a few things that I think are not a priority, especially for our unincorporated area. I'm not big on sidewalks out in the middle of the county, but things like that. But those are the points that I would just make in general. So I will leave it at that and not go any further.
I would say particularly in terms of it doesn't commit us to anything that, speaking for myself only, I don't want to be into a situation where the regional commission commits us to anything. And also, there's nothing that stops us from doing any of the things that you mentioned. It's just that we're not bringing the regional commission into it.
We're just not in sync, and I agree with that. Yes, you're right, Mr. Chairman.
Now, having said that too, particularly in terms of the infrastructure and medical needs, we're still free to add anything that we want to this document.
Yes.
At this time, before it was probably our last opportunity. But if there's something you'd like to put in there for infrastructure or in terms of the medical, we can certainly add that.
I think it would be an exercise in futility, so I'm not going there, Charlie. Thank you. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
And since Dallas commented, I think I will too. My frustration with this document is the potential it has to be a framework for a shared vision for our community is unrealized, because we just saw this, Dallas and I, when did you first get it?
Maybe Monday, I can't remember.
It's a last minute thing.
Yeah, and there are other entities on here, the Joint Development Authority, the Chamber of Commerce, that saw it for the first time yesterday. And one of the reasons that some of the things that you mentioned are not addressed here is because we've not put an effort in compiling input from these very relevant groups. And so I'm a little frustrated. I made these same comments last year that we need to get started earlier, bring everybody together and produce a meaningful document that is reflective of our community, the vision where we think we need to go and how we think we need to get there. And so to see it at the last minute and just say, here it is pretty disappointing. And that's all I got to say about that.
Okay, well, I'll make a comment or 20. First of all, I've already said that I don't really like the idea of us having a document that the regional commission holds us to. There's 3 reasons that we do this document at all. The first is that if we don't, we will be decertified as a county. We will no longer be a certified county, and that means that we will not be eligible for any state grants or pretty much any other sort of state assistance. So, because of that, we do it. We do it because, well, we're a county that implements impact fees, and that's that's something that we as a commission have no authority over, to have the impact fees from another agency. But as long as we have that, we have to complete this document. So we do that. And the last thing is that as we pursue grants for individual projects, if that particular project is listed on this document, it gives us a step up toward being accepted for that grant. Doesn't mean we will be, but it gives us a better opportunity than if that project is not listed on this document. Now, having said all that, it appears to me that what we need to do is, we have to do this document, and we do it, and we'll get it out of the way, but there's not a thing in the world that stops us from creating our own document that does just everything that you said, Travis. We can have our own plan, and it'll undoubtedly include an awful lot of what's on here, and some things that perhaps are not. And that can be our plan, and we can commit to it, and we can do whatever we want to do with it. And that's what I would propose, is
And I think that's a good idea.
that we just do our own.
With all the stakeholders, so that we are in sync, yes.
But I think if we do our own, it will address a lot of the concerns that you have. We can communicate directly with all the stakeholders. We can try to get buy-in from all the stakeholders. We can commit to it to the level that we're willing and able to commit to it, and our stakeholders are able and willing to commit to it. Essentially, it just will be our plan that we plan to execute. And there's not a reason in the world why we can't do that. And in fact, I think it'd be a pretty good idea to have that. And I would suggest that, it's not something we're going to be able to do in a month. I would suggest that over the next 2 months, it'd be on our agenda so that we can have discussions, see where we are on it, and go ahead and start creating this. I'm not going to call it a document. I'm going to say that we start creating this plan.
And the beauty of that is this document will flow right out of that process.
Yes,
I would agree.
By achieving our objectives on our own document, we will achieve a lot of what's on this other one.
Okay.
So, okay, any other discussion on this particular item? We have one zoning request. A request from Jason K. Rice, residential low density to A1 agricultural. There are, as I understand it, 2 specific reasons for this. One being that they would like to be able to construct an outbuilding on the property without necessarily building a residence first. And the other, that they would like to put more farm animals on the property than would currently be allowed by the level of animals that are allowed on an R1 lot. So,
Our discussion yesterday revealed that it was a platted subdivision lot, originally R1, as part of that subdivision, and that's, I think, a lot of the reluctance to grant the zoning change emerged.
I think that was part of our discussion yesterday, that it definitely is part of the subdivision, and the subdivision is all residential, even though it does border some agricultural land. The difficulty, if we were to change this, in my judgment, is that we are 2 things. We're opening up a piece of property that I think the purchaser of that land knew was not allowed at the time he purchased it, or she, whichever, that it was, and I think that's fairly recently, that community is residential and wants to remain that way. And in prior cases, we have tried to preserve that residential neighborhood for other requests like this. I do see that the Planning Commission, I think, recommended approval, but I'm not sure that that was part of their actual criteria to be concerned with. It does not create an island of something zoned with nothing surrounding it that matches, but I think it's just the wrong opening up of the lot in a subdivision to do a lot of things that you can do and grant the authority to do in agricultural land. Is not appropriate for that property.
Let me ask, is there anyone here that would like to speak for or against this particular rezoning request?
Yeah, do you want me to come up, Charlie?
Yes, if you would.
I'm the attorney.
If you don't speak in the microphone, we don't have an audio record of it later on.
Sure. I'm Jeff Chapman. I represent Mr. Rice. I'm the one who's at the Planning Commission. Mr. Rice is here with his child, and he can come up too if you'd like to speak to him anyway. I was just going to give you a printout, kind of show you the overview. May I approach? Give this to you. It's kind of a printout of, give you a picture. Ours is the...
Which I think we have, but
Yeah,
that's okay.
I thought y'all had it, but this kind of gives you a blowout. I think sometimes we narrow it in too much. I was going to give you a kind of a blowout picture of where it stands. And just, and certainly not, I wasn't involved in any prior discussions. I know y'all said you'd had some prior discussions. The only things I would cite is the reason Mr. Rice is wanting to do this is made it clear. And one of them has gone away because we do know that the ordinance changed now. Karen informed us just recently it changed, which allows you to build the building prior to building the house. That was one of the concerns originally. But then the other issue is just putting on farm animals, a few farm animals that are a little bit more, he has more options available under ag. But essentially, this was I wanted to phrase, because I was here at the original zoning in 2005. I remember when it first happened, because it was a big deal. I had some clients who were involved, and there was a lot of going back and forth. And I really believe after all that, and I remember speaking to Brian when Brian was here when we were doing the original mapping, a lot of folks, obviously, they try to do the best they could with establishing, but people that didn't send back in specific zoning, they just tried to establish, okay, we'll put out. And I think a lot of these subdivisions got thrown into R1 because they were broken down, and because of this one specific. It was a 1984 subdivision. There was no stringent covenants or anything like that, like the current subdivisions. I just want to identify this is a different kind of original subdivision. It was done in 1984, and it was one of the early subdivisions before all the rules and regulations went into effect. And I don't think anybody specifically said necessarily wanted to be R1. I think it just was identified as R1 because if you look at the subdivision, there's only, I think there's 15 lots. Jason, I've got the plat. It was included as part of the thing. There was a few lots, and in the subdivision, some of them wouldn't even have qualified for ag because they were less than 3 acres. There's about 4 or 5 of them that were. But if you look at the surrounding area, I mean, a few homeowners went and actually showed up at the Planning Commission meeting and objected and said they didn't want to. But when you really look at it, you see that anything that can be done, if you look at those 2 pieces that are right next to the east of them, anything, I mean, those could be large scale, chicken house farming property, and that's fine. They're not, but they could be. So there's really nothing that can be done near this neighborhood that couldn't already be done in existence right now under current zoning. The point is, obviously, my client's not planning to put up a chicken house on 5 acres of property. He can't. He wouldn't. He's not going to do that. He met with the neighbors and told them what his intentions were, and I think at that point, that's why we don't see them here today, although they were informed of the meeting at that time at the Planning Commission. My client actually had a meeting with them all to say, really, I just was about the farm animal issues. You just want to be limited to 1 farm animal per person. And I know, and I'm not familiar with this board, I'll be honest, I've not been in front of y'all. I had the pleasure of being in front of y'all as to these issues. And I understand you don't want to take a well-established subdivision like, Ridgemont or Kusawati and somehow try to alter the zoning issues on the area. But I think this is a little different, I would only say, because it's an older identified area. These are not, curb guttered roads we're talking about here that's gonna totally alter the whole makeup of the area. And if you look back, like I said, from the overview, you'll see it's largely an agricultural area. And there's really no evidence, and I would say, and what I said to the Planning Commission, and I'll be quiet, y'all had a long night, but I said to the Planning Commission, and there's really no evidence, I would say, you know, Gilmer County became during the Depression, which we call recession to make ourselves feel better, but it was really a depression, in my opinion. I've never seen one like it, nor my parents, but my grandfather was in the Depression. So anyway, but you know, during that time, we came back and went back to what we were, and I'm proud of that right now. I love the fact that Gilmer County became an ag area. You buy houses, what is sells now? Homes that are in ag areas. If you talk to real estate brokers, they're buying cabins in the woods and things like that. They're isolated. It's not, we no longer necessarily became, we were drifting toward, you know, as Jim Smith and I had many discussions, and drifting toward this development, subdivided area. You know, the beauty of the area is the fact that agriculture is all around us, and that's what's selling now. Those remote lots, those things like that. I mean, it's hard pressed to sell subdivided with curb gutter roads in Gilmer County. That's really not what became our market. So I'm only saying that to say I don't think, because of the size of his property, Mr. Rice is going to be able to do anything dramatically different than anything that's going on right in the surrounding area, or you know, in the vicinity of the area. As a matter of fact, a lot of folks talked about it. You actually travel down to this property, going through several pastures and farms. It's kind of the pristine nature there. He's not, by his nature of his property, he's going to be limited to what he can do with 5 acres, but he just wanted to have some more flexibility with basically the amount of animals that can be on there. There are no restrictions, I will say that, as to farm animal use or anything else at this point. And I would say that, without getting into legal status, I don't want to get into, me and Mr. Park talk about that later about all the legal stance, but because the covenants were 1984, I think they've expired anyway, because it was under the old law that, they only went for 20 years, and that was under if they were prior to a certain point. There's a cutoff, I think it's 1993, I think is that. If actually you had covenants prior, they didn't have the renewal provision, and that was before the provision saying if you had so many lots over, that basically the covenants were going to keep going on unless the community decided not to. This was prior to that. So these covenants, even if they were in there 4 or 5 that just talk about, using for residential purposes, which my client fully intends to use this for residential purposes. There's no point about that. But even those covenants, I think, have expired. But regardless, he's not going to do anything but build a home and have a nice place where he can have some animals and farm animals, and for his children to come up and enjoy the property.
Are y'all familiar with the changes that we made last year to the amount of animals that can be kept on an R1?
Not necessarily, Mr. If you'll refresh my memory, I think it's
Karen,
one.
you familiar with the numbers? Okay. How many cows?
Large animals
5
over
acres.
300 is 1 per acre, excluding 0.75 for a home.
Okay, so roughly, you said 3?
Over 300 pound animals, 1 per acre.
1 per acre, so there can be 3?
It also mentions 2 acres of grazable property
Okay.
within that area.
Well, whether it's A1 or R1, you just have to have for that number of cows.
If it's less than 300, it's 2 per acre, and if it's birds, it's 20 per acre.
Okay. So with 5 acres, you could have 100 chickens, you can have 3 cows, or 3 horses.
Excluding,
Well, this is over 5 acres, so how much?
It would be 5.76.
Yes.
5.76, so that covers
Five cows
0.75 for the
10
house. The remaining
smaller
5.
big animals.
Yeah, so the remaining 5, you can have 100 chickens, 3 cows, or 3 horses. I'm not even gonna get into pigs.
Like goats would be in the 2
The
per
goats,
acre.
yeah, you could have 6 goats.
You can go up to 5. It would be, because it's 5.76, you could have 5 large animals.
Minus the house.
10 small.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
Or 100 on the birds.
Yeah.
And the ordinance names that in or, not and.
Okay, so you could have 5
Or?
horses, 5 cattle, not all together, 100 chickens, or some mixture of that that didn't exceed,
It doesn't provide for a mixture, but,
well,
I'm not really
You
sure
could
how
have-
that would be marked.
You could use up 1 acre for a large animal, the next acre for 2
Just like we
medium
should,
size.
I guess that's the way it would kind of fall out.
That's the way I would interpret it.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, it doesn't
Um,
provide for that, but I'm sure it doesn't matter. as long as
Those
you-
quantities fall anywhere in line with what y'all had in mind?
Well, Mr. Rice could have to address that specifically as to what quantities.
That's pretty generous.
He was thinking at the time really was more, he just did not want to get into, it looked like the limitations on R1 were obviously a little
This is more so than.
stringent, but does he plan on doing a cattle farm? He can't. I mean, obviously that's not the intent.
No, understand.
There's not going to be an agricultural operation here. He wouldn't have enough property to do it anyway. He'd be governed. We've already talked about that. That was one of the convincing things of the planning commission is they realized that with 5.76, there's not going to be a farm operation going on here. He just wanted to have that flexibility. The rules were a little stronger with R1 than A1, and we just thought it was, again, consistent with the area. Maybe not this particular older subdivision, but I don't know that, again, originally anybody specifically said they wanted to be R1. I think it was established that way by the people, just non-response that was put on there. Because you can look at the ones to the left, Anderson Creek, there's several, that's a subdivided area, but there's a lot of A1. It's not unusual to have A1, developments. And this is not, like I said, a 2,000, lot development that all is but I mean, that's the purpose. Now, Mr. Rice is here. If y'all like to ask him any questions, he could answer specifically as to.
The only question I really had was in terms of whether or not the number of animals allowed in R1 would be sufficient. And I think you've answered that for me. I will say this, that I believe, been consistent that if someone comes to Gilmer County and finds a place that they would like to live, and it's R1, and if they do their homework and they look around and they see that the property surrounding this are also R1, then I believe it is our responsibility to protect that status for them. And I have consistently voted against a rezoning to A1 in situations where I felt that applies. Not always in the majority, but I do believe this applies here. I think that the people who buy there, if they did their homework, if they looked around and they found that it was R1, that they have a reasonable expectation that we should protect that for them. Now, we have made changes such that you could put an outbuilding on there. We've made very large changes to the number of animals that you can put on an R1 piece of property, which, really, if you stop to think about R1, I think it's a pretty generous numbers that we just spoke of. And I guess what this is a very long way around me saying that I could not support this myself.
May I come up and speak?
Yes, sir.
You go ahead. I'll sit down.
It may not be material for the discussion, but might be helpful because I think it speaks to your question about does the flexibility afforded by the revisions to the R1 accommodations for animals offer what I'm looking for versus the A1 zoning. And, I'm not a lawyer. That's partially why I need one. But the example that I can offer, which was mentioned by one of the adjoining or property owners in the area. The adjoining property owners, well, two of them are already agriculture, lots, the one to the south and the one to the east, which borders lots of the other property owners in the subdivision. But one example of not having flexibility, according to my interpretation of the accommodations for R1, a male chicken is not allowed, period. You can have hens, because there's something in there about you can have 6 hens in an enclosure. And the birds that are outdoors, up to 100 according to the amount that you can get per acre, I don't know what that includes, but if I want to have, chicks from eggs, you got to have a rooster. And
I'm surprised that it does, I didn't realize it didn't allow roosters.
It's about the noise.
It says,
That was the original.
they want the hens and the.
yeah, so
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
that's one example. I mean, it's great that there's so many things that you can do with R1, but that would be one example of the types of flexibility that you can get when you have an agriculture property. And then the mix and match of, one goat here, one cow there, a couple of hens here, just, I'm a big believer in complying with the law, okay? No matter what, I'm going to do that. That's part of the reason why I wanted to seek the rezoning, is because I want to be able to do what I'd like to do with the land, but I'm going to do it within what the law states, because I don't want to get in trouble with my neighbors or with the civic authorities. And so, I'd like to have the flexibility that I understand is available for the agriculture. And, if it's limited to R1, then it limits what I would do. I'm not going to go outside of the bounds of that. And it does place a, sort of a burden on, if you got a male and a female goat and they have kids, and you've already got, it just makes things really complicated. And, I don't have a farm up there, but, and I'm relatively young. I don't have this all worked out, but I just generally am looking for flexibility. And no, I'm not, if you could see the land, you'd know. I mean, it's like this anyhow. So I'm not even real sure, just what all I'd be able to do. But that's the idea. And, could I answer any other questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm curious as to, I really appreciate what you want to do. I think I understand that better. You've explained that, and I think I comprehend that. But why did you choose to buy this piece of property that was R1, knowing that it was R1, obviously, that shouldn't have been a surprise. But why would you have done that and not found 5 acres that was already agricultural? I'm just curious, and that's only curiosity, and it's nothing specifically to do.
I didn't find a 5-acre tract of agriculture available, especially not for the price that I got this property for.
Okay.
For sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So sir, there was one letter of opposition from John and Diana Smiley. Are they adjacent to you? Are they down the road? Do you know?
They were not at the neighbors meeting on Saturday. There were 8 different owners that we met up at Brian and Kathy Bavard's house. They're up over the backside of the ridge. They're not adjoining either. So the Smileys were not there, but I believe, having looked at the map, that they're up at the front of the subdivision. So probably, I don't know, 6 lots away and towards the entrance of it, and on the other side of the street.
You mentioned them being several hundred feet. Now, I don't know if that could mean just about anything, I guess. But you haven't spoken to them directly?
No, they just simply said when we had the neighbors meeting that they were not gonna be there. I don't know whether there was a,
Well, they did note in their letter that they were not able to attend on that particular day, and that was why they submitted the letter. Any other comments or questions? Would anybody like to feature a motion? Okay, well, I do appreciate what you said and what your intentions would be. I still feel personally that I could not support it. And in the failure of any other motion, then I would make a motion that it be denied.
Mr. Chairman, I really would like to encourage Mr. Rice to see what can be done with the residential zoning with the extra hobby livestock use of that. It's not a complete solution for you. I know that wouldn't maybe answer everything. Your situation may be cause even to have the commission rethink that someday on how we deal with that. But I will second the motion to deny this.
Any others comments? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I do apologize, sir, but I think we have to be consistent on these. Okay, resolution adopting the first reader of the Gilmer County Code of Ethics. I do have one comment, perhaps correction on there. In section 2.113 on the first page, about midway through item number 1.
Say it again, I just got to.
2.113, about midway through item number 1, that little pass. It said the terms do not include other county elected officials. But in section 2.112 above it, scope, it says the provisions of the Code of Ethics shall be applicable to all elected or appointed county officials. There seems to be a bit of a...
Where was the above reference?
Section 2.112 scope, directly above the...
Oh, okay.
Correct. It says that it shall be applicable to all elected or appointed county officials. And then below that in item 1 under 2.113, we're saying that the terms do not include other county elected officials. And I know in item 1, we're basically just defining what a county official consists of, but that's the gist of this entire document, and all the way down through it, it discusses county officials. And I know that there are some elected officials other than ourselves that feel like this might be sort of stepping on their toes, and they're a little concerned about it. I'm just thinking that a simple solution would be if we modify section 2.112 to not specify that it applies to all elected officials. Number of ways we may address that. Maybe we say it applies to those elected officials mentioned in 2.1131. Maybe we just say it applies to the Board of Commissioners.
So this, in a larger context, this is part of an application to become a county of ethics?
Correct. Yeah, I know where you're getting.
And then you start excluding folks. Is that in the spirit of the application?
Very possibly not, but I don't think we can force other elected officials to opt in.
Then we'd need to call it something other than the county of ethics. We could call it commission.
I see your point, but I would still like to go for the certification to be a county of ethics. And,
With people excluded.
well, yeah. Now, we're excluding all kinds of people in item one.
That seems odd.
And really, in item one, we excluded other elected officials. We already did that. It's just that 2.112 above sort of muddies that.
If it were, you could just simply scratch out all elected or appointed, and then it would just simply read the provisions of this code of ethics shall be applicable to county officials, and then you're defining county officials below it.
I think that would work. I see your point, but, and it's not a path I want to go down here tonight.
There's been opposition to having this apply to other officials.
No, I'm not saying that or anything else. I'm saying that there's a.
Sounded like that's what you said.
I'm saying that there's a confusion between these two paragraphs.
David's offered a solution, and that's probably agreeable as it's going to go.
But it says that in 213, paragraph 1, does not include other county elected officials. Who is that?
Well, it'd be the sheriff, probate judge, magistrate judge, clerk of court, coroner, leave anybody out? Tax commissioner.
District attorney, state official, but I think that covers it like that.
So those folks. Essentially what we're saying is this is for the board of commissioners.
Does that satisfy the county?
Well, I would have to believe that it does because this was patterned after a county that has already been approved.
This is their link, this is their reference, and so I would suspect that it should pass muster.
Okay.
And if not, there's this thing called back up and fine.
So this recommendation came from the folks that granted this.
GMA. And that's just going to be the one certified.
Yeah, and GMA initially came out with cities of ethics.
So why don't you do David's fix?
Oh, yeah, it looks good to me. I mean, I like it.
All right, I'm good.
Okay. All right. With, are there any other?
David, I would go ahead and scratch out the all as well as
Yeah.
No, I did.
elected or appointed. You did?
Yeah, I did scratch out all elected
Okay.
or appointed.
Okay.
And then after we make the tweaks that were discussed yesterday and today, and y'all see it, if we get into September and y'all want, if we get a little bit more, that's not gonna be a problem. Now, if you wanna make a wholesale change and start exempting out somebody or making significant changes, then of course you probably need to start all over.
David, did you see any reason to incorporate anything from the current ethics paragraph or section or article in our ordinances?
The other section that you currently got on the books, it may be such that we want to just simply supplement this one here and leave it in there, but there may be an issue with some overlap, and I'll look at that. But that one wasn't advertised to be amended. This one, or I think it was meant to change, so we may end up doing just some minor tweaks in there, okay?
Okay.
But it's essentially, at the end of the day, hopefully you'll get an ordinance that's going to allow you to be certified. That's the primary goal. And then hopefully we never have to use this. That's the key.
Well, yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
That's the plan.
And just for clarification, I need to mention that this is not something we're doing because we have any perceived ethics problems or anything like that. GMA, which is the cities, as the ACCG is to counties, initiated a while back a city of ethics program where if the cities met certain requirements, they could be certified by GMA as a city of ethics. And it was popular enough that they expanded that to include that they would certify counties as counties of ethics. And I just felt that it would be a really good thing to have Gilmer County certified as a county of ethics. And so that's why we're going down this path, not because we have any perceived issues that need to be corrected. Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, I would propose that we go forward. Let me find my first reader here and adopt the first reader on this.
Oh, I'll second that. That was a motion, okay?
Oh, I'm
You
sorry.
said proposal, I didn't know.
I'm sorry, I will make a motion.
There you go.
I do apologize.
All right.
Then I second.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I believe, since I have misplaced my agenda and all this stuff, that the only thing we had remaining was to approve the letter of support for IMBA. Do we need to read that into the record, David?
Unless y'all want to, I mean, it's not necessary, it'll be available. I'm certain that as soon as it's signed, they want it.
Okay.
I would like for all of us to sign it, if you want to sign it, Dallas.
Sure, it doesn't matter, but I'll be happy to.
I think Gary will know where.
Yeah. And in fact, I can redo this last page the way you put on.
So essentially, this is just, Gilmer County is applying for the IMBA Ride Center, bronze level, which International Mountain Bike Association is a designation under their authority, and they will be promoting. There's just some prestige associated with it, and it should be good for making us more of a destination for that community. And as part of the application, we have an opportunity to provide a letter of support from the Board of Commissioners, and that's what this is. So, motion to adopt.
Seconded. Any comment? All in favor? Aye. Travis, do we need to do anything with that tonight? Okay. Okay. I know we already sort of did this, but since that was a specialized sort of thing, I will say, are there any other citizens wishing to speak? If not, I would make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, folks. We appreciate it. Always something.